Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, September the 1st. I'm joined today by Jeff Young. Jeff, thanks for taking the time out today to join us.
No, it's great. Thanks for having me, Brian.
You're very welcome. Now, I always like to start off by learning about our guest. So I'm going to ask you, who is Jeff Young?
Yeah, I guess I live in Vancouver, Canada, and I've been born and raised in Vancouver, spent 9 years in Alberta as well, and moved back to BC with my family about 9 years ago now. And I'm married and I have three growing kids. And as we were just talking before, I just took my youngest down to university in the US this past week. So exciting times.
Awesome. Now, let's talk about your career path. You've had a pretty interesting career path. So what led to you doing what you are today?
Yeah, I think like a lot of folks coming out of high school and going into college, went the criminology route and had law enforcement on my mind. At a very young age, I was accepted into the Vancouver Police Reserve program. So as a reserve constable at the ripe age of 19, I actually had applied and they had accepted me, and then figured out I was only 18. So I got deferred for a year. So spent some time there and got deferred for hiring full time. And ended up going over to the transit police, which was just starting out in lower mainland BC, and was working casual part-time with the transit police. And at around the same time, I was working with the UBC campus patrol out at the largest university here in the West. And my director at that time had just recently lost one of his coordinators over to healthcare. And that person was Don McAllister. So Don had been with UBC and went to starting with Children's Hospital and the University Health Network. And he had complained to his old boss at UBC about not having, any young, good talent available. And my director at UBC said, "Oh, I got the perfect guy for you. I can't hire him full time because of union seniority rules, etc." And introduced me to Don McAllister, and I joined University Hospital Network, which comprised of University Hospital Network and BC Children's Hospital, and at the time Grace Hospital, which was a women's hospital, and joined there as an in-house security shift supervisor. Again, casual on call. But between that job and my BC Transit police job, I was working more than full time. So being a young guy, I was fine with that, working lots. And then lo and behold, on the exact same day, BC Transit and the hospital both offered me a full-time job on the same day. So there was, I guess, the career choice of do I go into law enforcement with transit, or do I go over into healthcare full-time? And I really enjoyed my short time in healthcare. And so I chose healthcare and began a 10-year career at that University Hospital, Children's Hospital, and then what became BC Women's Hospital site, the Oak Street site, as it's known here locally. So 3-hospital site, and one of the adult acute hospitals closed down, so it became Children's and Women's Health Center. So pretty large organization here in Vancouver.
All right. And if I remember correctly, your wife is a nurse. Is that correct?
No, she's actually works in healthcare, but she does the bed allocations. So she assigns sort of a tetra game, putting the right pieces in the right spots. As you know, Brian, and maybe some of our Americans don't know, is that it's quite common for our Canadian hospitals to be over 100% occupied. And so it really becomes a shuffle game as far as where patients go and having suitable bed space. And it is literally a game of Tetris.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, one person that you had mentioned while we were just speaking there was Don McAllister. So I assume Don McAllister was someone who's probably influenced your career, at least to some extent. But who were some of your major influencers and mentors throughout your career?
Yeah, it's Don hired me in 1990. At that time, when I look back at my early mentors, there's John Hill, who was seen as sort of one of the godfathers, if you will, of healthcare security here on the West Coast. And he was based in Victoria, and he has since retired and out sailing on a sailboat. and as well as Al Sweet in Alberta. And many old timers will know Al, as he was one of the first Canadian IHSS presidents way back when. And I hate to guess, but probably somewhere in the early to mid 80s, Al was around. And during my time in Alberta, I spent a lot of time, seeing Al and working with Al. So I think between Don and who's still a mentor to this day, John Hill, who's retired, and Al Sweet, who's retired as well. I think out here in the West, those were really my mentors and helped me along the way and taught me a lot of great things about not only healthcare security, but also about IHSS too, with Al being, so involved, and Don and John, and I had a chance to join them in founding the BC chapter of IHSS as well. So we're as a group, we're the founding members of the chapter out here in BC.
Excellent. And it's funny because I always try to pull a lot of things from, I always try to pull things from different people. So there's a lot of people who've influenced me or mentored me, whether they knew it or not. So one of the things I picked up was, the first ACNE I went to, I believe you were presiding over. And I remember you saying the one thing that stuck with me was we need to be more business-like as healthcare security professionals. So just to make sure that you're aware of that, I just wanted to let you know that you impacted me that way, because I've taken that really seriously. Whenever I'm representing the association, I always make sure that I look professional, and a lot of it just stemmed back to what you had said there. So thank you for that. And again, I just want to let you know you've impacted my career.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah. At least I impacted at least one person. That's great.
For sure. Now, so you have an extensive experience in our industry, and over the 30 years that you've been working in healthcare security, I'm sure things have changed in a pretty impactful way as well. So what are some of the technological advances that you've seen throughout your career?
Yeah, that's a big question. And all I can say is, to younger people, I guess, is boy, have things changed, and they'll continue to change as well. I remember starting back in 1990, and our program was literally buried in the basement of the hospital. And when we were needed, we would be called in, up from the basement. We would come and help with the issue, and kind of back we'd go. And I remember typing reports on a typewriter, and again, some younger people might want, what's a typewriter? But and then a great invention came along, which was called Whiteout, which was a great tool especially for myself. So we would type reports on a tri-copy form. So there is no electronic database whatsoever. It was all hard copy. So if you think about today and what we can do with data and databases and having that data availability compared to then, light years for sure. So I think just the evolution of our group, our industry, coming from that, and kind of been pulled along, I think, by the business of healthcare too. I remember going to meetings, and healthcare is such a data-rich industry. And I think we've been, as healthcare security professionals, been a bit behind that. And we're playing catch up now, because we see that how they use data, how they capture it, how they use it. I think that we've now picked up on that. I remember, times and, we need more resources. Well, why? Well, we're busier. And so, the boss would usually go, well, show me your data. And I can remember that was a real struggle. And I think now we come prepared for those meetings with our executive and say, we need more resources, or we want to do this program. We want to mitigate this issue. We take that business approach, and I think we've had a lot more success. And I think tied into that is where we've come in the hierarchy of the organizations too. Back in 1990, again, being in the basement of the hospital, we had a fairly large site and a large department. Our highest ranking manager was a manager who reported to a director of housekeeping. And I don't mean any disrespect here, but that probably wasn't ideal from a profile perspective. But I think from being more business-like and having educated people in management positions as well within our industry have moved us along to the point now today where we have directors, executive directors, vice presidents of healthcare security programs reporting directly to the hospital executive. And those folks have master's degrees, and in some cases, as you know, we've got some PhDs that are overseeing some security programs within healthcare. So that real short is that evolution over that 30 years is quite significant, where we've come and where we're going to, because we'll just keep continuing to progress, I think.
Excellent. And the one thing that you touched on there was the whole piece around data. Now, I had already alluded to your involvement with IHSS, being a past president. One of the things that you've been a real driver behind is the data warehouse project. Now, for anyone who may not be familiar with that project, would you mind talking about that a little bit and what kind of the desired outcome is for that whole project?
Yeah, I'll give you a short overview, because we're also presenting at the ACNE 2.0 next week. So myself and our co-chair, Kevin Toohey, have pre-recorded a presentation. So if the folks are really interested, we've done about a half an hour presentation on it. But really the data warehouse project is to look to see if we can, first of all, have the ability to collect member data in a confidential way that de-identifies the organization, because confidentiality is such a key piece. And for the exercise, we focused on violence, and we decided strategically for the data warehouses to divide violence into two buckets, if you will: assaultive behavior and then the threat of violence, and that's it. And we did some beta testing with some of our members who had large organizations. It was interesting that when we get into violent descriptions, out of a half a dozen or so of our members, we had 179 different categories for violence combined. So, but we were able to do it, which was encouraging. So the data warehouse project proved, I guess, the proof of concept has been proven, and that will be in our presentation next week. And then the next phase is, if again, defining a scope and getting board approval, because there is funding attached to it, of course, is to move it forward into a bigger platform where our members, the vision is our members could input data, and the system would be able to produce a plethora of reports for our members. And also, I think importantly, is benchmarking as well. So if you're a large 1,000-bed urban setting, level 3 trauma, et cetera, you could find like sites within the database, and hopefully, we have enough data there that it's reliable, and you can compare yourself to other like facilities. So violence per inpatient day, are you higher or lower than the average? And you have that ability to slice and dice the data in every way, which way that you would like to do some comparisons. And then the other piece of that is you can also then take some mitigating strategies, and I'll use IHS certifications. So if your program had IHSS certification as part of their training curriculum, hypothetically, we could run a comparison and say, those facilities that have IHSS certifications have 8%, and I'm making these numbers totally up, have 8% lower violence per inpatient day than those that don't. So then if you're going to seek funding to support IHSS certification, and your boss goes, well, what's this going to do for us? Well, you can say, well, according to the IHSS data warehouse, those programs of like facilities like ours would show an 8% decrease in violence. And so that's sort of the big picture vision of where we'd like to go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that you had touched on earlier was just how the hierarchy and the perception of security has changed within the healthcare structure. Now, I had Don McAllister on a while back talking about his experience, and you alluded to it earlier. He was the lone security representative in a hospital as a coordinator, wearing a blazer, and responding to calls. What have you seen as far as the evolution of the security department within healthcare facilities?
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand with that. Be more business-like, and the head of the security program should be a business-like individual. They should have the education and the tools to be able to to talk the language of business with the other executive within the organization. And that's an important feature, I think, of as a leader, and an important trait to be able to talk to business people that are running large healthcare organizations, to be able to talk the same language. And it's such a key in my mind. And I remember advice that Don had given me when speaking with my executive. He said, there's a saying that's kind of true. He says, be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. So that was sort of, in my mind, is to be, to the point, have the data to support it, and have them support your whatever you're pitching at the board level or at the executive level.
Awesome. Now, we kind of touched on this when we were just talking about the data warehouse. Now, you gave the example earlier of using a typewriter and how difficult it was to get data back then. It wasn't quite the same as it is now, 30 years later. What are some of the major advances that you've seen in this area that have helped our profession?
Well, I think simply just the move to electronic reporting and databases, that's a huge step in itself. I think, we still lack, the things that hopefully the data warehouse will bring, things like benchmarking. I think we've have always struggled and will continue to struggle around staffing numbers. I think that's always been one point. In theory, the data warehouse should also be able to give you staffing levels for like facilities, or at least a range of staffing levels, FTEs per whatever the denominator is. I think we all agree that, square footage is not an appropriate metric for healthcare. But in the interim, we struggle with what is then. We talked about a weighted square footage. So a square foot of an emergency department weights more than a square foot of an outpatient clinic that's open Monday to Friday. So there's all kinds of different theories, scenarios, formulas out there, but we really don't have one that we can really hang our hat on. And I'm hoping that the data warehouse would at least be able to assist us, at least getting to the point where there's a range of, here's a like facilities, of all like facilities, they have a range of, 50 to 55 FTEs, and then you can at least gauge yourself on, are you in that threshold?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about to this point that you'd like to discuss? I know we've covered quite a few topics here.
Yeah, no, we have. And I think that, we need to continue to, professionalize and be more business-like. And I have lots of sayings as a lot of my staff that I've worked with in the past. And the one that's really dear to my heart that I think that everyone, I'm hoping, would take to heart too, is that, we support a safe and secure environment of care that will allow our clinicians, of course, to provide the best possible care, while also contributing to a positive patient experience. And I think if you take that and you ask that question of, what am I doing? Does it support that? Does it support that strategic plan, that mission of the organization? Everything we do within the healthcare security, within your healthcare security program, you should be able to at least touch base back to that. And sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's very straightforward, but when you're making a decision to do something, ask yourself, does this support, a safe and secure environment of care? Does it support the clinician providing exceptional care? Does it support the overall patient experience? And, you should be able to say yes, in my mind.
Excellent. Now, one thing that you touched on as well was the presentation that you'll be taking part in at the ACNE. If you want to touch on that a little bit more, and also, what can we expect to see from you moving forward?
Yeah, the presentation, it's recorded, so it's on demand. So as I mentioned, Kevin Toohey and myself, and we also have our phase 2 consultants also as part of the presentation as well. So we talk about the experience that we've had on phase 2 of the project, which is the proof of concept, or can we collect the data? We had several, as I mentioned, several of our members volunteer to provide their violence data for us. Again, in that de-identified confidential manner, which was a huge deal and a really a big part of our process with the project. And putting the data into the buckets, as I call them, and being able to slice and dice a bit of the data. Now, not having a huge sample size, but the sample size was large enough that we were able to do some data integrity checks and some data manipulation, if you will. So I'm encouraged by phase 2, and I'm encouraged that the proof of concept is there. And now phase 3, which we still need to develop the scope for, but it would be a round of, okay, now how do we do this? As far as what's the engine of the data warehouse, and I'm hopeful that by developing the scope and getting board approval on the budget, still yet to be determined, that we can move this project forward. And I'm excited to next year's ACNE, hopefully in person, that Kevin and I will be able to present a much more in-depth overview of the data warehouse that would really be exciting and opening a lot of our members' eyes and support for the data warehouse, because I think we're at that tipping point now where it's make it or break it, and I think it's something that we need.
Excellent. And another thing that I just kind of wanted to ask you about is it's come up a lot in this conversation, obviously, is the International Association for Healthcare Security and Safety. Now, you were one of the founding members in BC. What has the association and membership meant for you over your career?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a common theme. I think, there are the resources there, which are, you can't get anywhere else, but I really think it's the relationships that I've been able to foster over the years. So if I have an issue and I know that Bonnie in Boston has a program, I can call up Bonnie on her personal cell phone on a Saturday, and she'll answer, and she'll, so give me, the answers, or give me some documentation or whatnot to help me. I don't think I've ever gotten a no from a fellow member, and likewise, that has to be a two-way street too. And I'm happy to say that I remember having a number of IHSS members from all over North America here in Vancouver in my home, for dinner. So Tom Smith and his wife have been in my house and had dinner. So I've had Tim Pertally, the late Tim Pertally, up here in Vancouver to see me as well. We've had a number of those folks from, quite far away, the other part of North America, and, privileged to call them colleagues and friends too. So I think that's really what the association is about, is those personal contacts and the assistance that they'll give you.
Awesome. Now, is there a message that you would like to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Well, I go back to my sayings, right? And I said, I think that's, we're here, healthcare security professionals and programs, we're here to support patient care, right? It's not about security, it's about patient care. And how we do is, we help support, and support's a key word. We don't do it because we couldn't do it with the number of folks. We have to get buy-in. And as I said, another saying is, everyone in the organization is a healthcare security person, because they've got to assist being eyes and ears and part of the safety culture of the organization. But everything we do, we need to go back to supporting a safe and secure environment of care. And that's, I guess, my message today is, when you're asking yourself, should we be doing this? Does it support, patient care?
And if I remember correctly too, there's another Jeff Young-ism, if you will. If and excuse me if I butcher this in paraphrasing it, but I think you used to say that we are healthcare professionals who happen to be in security, something along those lines.
Yeah, I consider myself a healthcare worker. I'm a healthcare worker that just happens to do security.
That's it.
And then, I've got lots of Jeff-isms, I guess. The other one that comes to mind too is, when you're thinking of budget and stuff, is think of it, every dollar that you spend on security potentially is taking $1 away from direct patient care. So spend those dollars wisely, I guess, is the message.
Right. Yeah. And it's, I know we joke around and call them Jeff-isms, but they're all very valuable things. And, the way that you put them makes it easy to remember.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, in closing, how can we connect with you?
Yeah, I guess, that's the last step is, since the last start of the year, I guess, I've been having my own consulting company specializing in healthcare. So it's Jeff at Pure Protection, and Pure is Pur Protection, no E, Jeff at pureprotection.com, or my website, www. Again, Pure, no E, pureprotection.com. And you can check me out there, and my contact information is there as well, email and phone.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And it's always great to have an opportunity to speak with someone like yourself who influenced my career. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Tune into the next episode where we're joined by Sean Bonet. And until next time, stay safe and take care.